Every year, millions of people are smuggled around the world. Our inability to stop the smuggling of people represents one of the greatest policy failures of modern history. Consider this. We have an international convention on migrant smuggling that's been widely ratified and signed by over 100 states. We have international organizations and NGOs that dedicate themselves full-time to stopping migrant smuggling. Each year, hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on projects and programs to try to stop people smuggling. And yet every year, inexorably, inevitably, year on year, the number of people smuggled around the world increases and doesn't decrease. In this presentation, I'd like to suggest one reason for this gap between policy and reality. And that reason is that we have fundamentally misunderstood what migrant smuggling is. We don't understand who is involved, we don't understand why they're involved, and we don't understand how the process works. And I'd like to suggest to you that perhaps an alternative and better way to understand migrant smuggling is to view it as a business in which every single person is incentivized to make money. Before doing that, let me reflect briefly on why this topic matters. Why should you care about migrant smuggling? Well, I think there are at least 3 reasons. The most important reason is that migrant smuggling kills people. Whether it's people drowning off Christmas Island on their way to Australia, or people drowning in the Mediterranean, moving between North Africa and Europe. Whether it's people dying of heat exhaustion in the Arizona desert between Mexico and the United States of America. Or whether it's through asphyxiation and suffocation in the back of trucks in Eastern Europe. Migrant smuggling kills thousands of people each year. Those people who aren't killed, those people who make it, those people who find work in destination countries, find themselves exploited and vulnerable. Whether it's men working as cockle pickers in Morecambe Bay or as shipbreakers in Bangladesh. Whether it's women working as prostitutes in Thailand or as domestic servants in the Gulf states. Whether it's children working as camel jockeys in the United Arab Emirates or in weaving factories in Pakistan. Migrant smuggling exposes individuals to enormous harm and enormous vulnerability. But a second reason you should care about migrant smuggling is that it risks undermining national security as well. Very often, the people who smuggle individual human beings also are the same people who smuggle drugs and who smuggle weapons too. Migrant smuggling undermines the exercise of national sovereignty. It moves into your country's large number of people who you don't know about their whereabouts or what they're doing or how they entered the country. National security concerns, very important indeed. A third reason why migrant smuggling matters, and I think especially in this European context in which we find ourselves today, is that migrant smuggling is one reason why we have a rising wave of xenophobia and discrimination against migrants in many of our societies. One of the reasons we have that rising wave of discrimination is because too many people are entering our countries without authorization. So for at least 3 reasons, we should care about migrant smuggling and try to understand how to stop it. Let me now suggest to you that an alternative way to understand migrant smuggling that might give us some insights into how to stop migrant smuggling is to view it as a business. And I'd like to do this by following the money. I'm going to follow the money through the smuggling process from the beginning to the end. Let's start at the beginning. How much does migrant smuggling cost? Well, of course, costs vary. If you want me to smuggle you across a local border in Africa, I'll do it for a bag of rice. If you want me to smuggle you from Beijing to Vancouver, I'll charge you $30,000. But I can also adjust my costs. If you're wealthy, if you've got money up front, I'll fly you directly from Pakistan to Australia. If you haven't got much money, then we can travel over land, we can go via Indonesia, and perhaps we can take a boat for a far cheaper price. The costs of migrant smuggling can be adjusted to the depth of your pocket. How do migrants raise these not insubstantial amounts of money? Most migrants, indeed most people, don't have $10,000 or $20,000 simply in savings. Sometimes migrants turn to moneylenders. It's risky because then, of course, you find yourself in debt to those moneylenders. Much more often, migrants turn to friends and families. And friends and families use their savings, sell property, sell land, sell jewelry in order to provide the money for migrants to make that journey and to pay a smuggler. The immediate implication is this, that migrants' friends and families have a stake in the process. They have made an investment and they expect a return on that investment. Once migrants have raised the money from their generous friends and families, how's the money exchanged and handed over to the smuggler? Well, 10 years ago, this was very straightforward. You paid the smuggler the full amount of money up front. Here's $10,000. I'd like you to take me from Pakistan to the UK. The risk, of course, is the smuggler disappears, takes the money, and you're left in Pakistan. The process has evolved in response to customer concerns. About 5 years ago, you would put a deposit down, perhaps $5,000. Here's $5,000. When I get to the UK, I will give you the money that's owed, the further $5,000. Here, of course, you're exposing yourself to a different risk, and the risk is this. You arrive in the UK, you owe me $5,000, and I'll force you into prostitution until you've paid me back the $5,000. Once again, the process has evolved over the years in response to customer-client concerns. And let me tell you how it works today in Pakistan. In Pakistan today, no money is exchanged between migrants and smugglers until the migrant has arrived safely in his or her destination. The families of migrants deposit the full amount of money with a third party, often a moneylender or a trader. Once the migrant arrives in his destination, makes a call to confirm that they've arrived, the money is then released by the third party to the smuggler. If you think about it, what I'm talking about here is a money-back guarantee on smuggling. If you make it, I get the money. If you don't, I get no money at all. The money will be returned from the third party back to the family because the process has failed. A money-back guarantee on migrant smuggling. Now, the smuggler, while the money is being held in this escrow account, it is rather like eBay, it's being held in an escrow account by a third party, the smuggler still has to make this process work. In fact, the process has got to work, otherwise he's not going to get the money being held by the third party. Now, we often think of smugglers as evil-minded, all-encompassing criminals, James Bond sorts of baddies, people with 3 nipples stroking white cats in Bosnia and so on and so forth. The truth is a lot different from that. Smugglers, or at least the people you will make initial contact with when you want to think about a journey, are often travel agents. And they'll close the doors of their office and then perhaps do a little bit of business on the side once the office is closed. And they work with an entire network of people. Someone has to provide a passport, either a forged passport or a stolen passport that's been tampered. Someone has to provide a visa, which is another person in the network. Think about the last time you took an international flight not within the European Union. You had to show your passport 3 times. First, when you checked in, secondly, as you went through security, and thirdly, just before you got on the aeroplane. Potentially 3 people who need to be bribed to make sure that the process works smoothly and you get on the aeroplane. You may also need to bribe people in transit countries, if you're changing the aeroplane, and also in destination countries too. And let me make this point clear. Migrant smuggling is about corruption, not just in origin countries, but also in destination countries too, in Schiphol, in London Heathrow, in Paris Charles de Gaulle, as much as it is in the countries from which migrants are coming. So we have a situation where the money is being held by a third party and the smuggler needs to pay a network of people in order to make this process work. The smuggler is taking a financial risk. He is laying out money in order to make the process work, and only once the process works will he retrieve the money from the third party. This means the process has to work. The smuggler cannot risk the process not working, otherwise he loses the investment he's made in the network. It means the smuggler has to use able and capable passport forgers and visa suppliers and people he knows can get people through airports. It also probably means that the smuggler needs to move multiple numbers of people. If I move 1 person and it fails, I've lost my money. If I move 10 people and 1 doesn't get through, at least the 9 have got through and I get some of the money back. Smugglers are incentivized to move people en masse and not as individuals. Once the process has been set up, we are clear in the research. Migrants move to destination countries such as ours and they almost always find work. A reality of the economies in which we all work and live is that they're increasingly divided between a formal economy, the sorts of things that I guess most of us work in, and an informal economy. An informal economy where people are willing to work for less than the minimum wage, with no social rights, where people may be exploited and discriminated against, where people are working in dangerous and difficult and dirty jobs. Even during recession, there are jobs that we consider to be below us. I would rather sit at home, watch television, and take my welfare check than clean a toilet, because I consider that to be demeaning. There are all sorts of jobs in our economies for which we rely on irregular migrants and people who've been smuggled to do the work. So these migrants find work. They don't just find work, but they find work that pays them enough money to begin to send home money as well. Listen to these statistics. And a wonderful quote on this, I interviewed someone in Pakistan relatively recently, and he said to me, there is no better way in Pakistan today to invest $10,000 than to pay for your son to be smuggled to the UK. There is no better way to invest that money. On average, it takes 2 years of money sent back from migrants to pay off the initial fee of, let's say, $10,000. After that fee's been paid off, the money sent back by migrants on average doubles household incomes every year. Where else are you going to get a return on your investment like that? So let's follow the money through the process from the beginning, how much it costs, to how the money is raised, to how the exchange system works, to how migrants find jobs, and to how migrants send money back through the process to close the circle. What does this tell us about migrant smuggling? How does this business approach perhaps make it a bit more of an understandable process? I think it tells us 3 principal things. Firstly, it tells us this is a network. It's not just a relationship between a migrant and a smuggler. It involves migrants' families and friends. It involves a network of people who work with the smuggler to make the process work. It involves employers in countries such as ours. It even probably involves consumers such as you and me as well. Secondly, this approach tells us that every single person in the process is deeply incentivized to make it work. Migrants have to get work, have to save money, and have to save money back, send money home, because they're socially obliged to do so to their family and friends. Families and friends have put a large amount of money up front as a stake and an investment, and they will expect a return. The network of people working with the migrant smugglers must make this work, otherwise next time they won't get any money out of him, and he'll turn to another person within the network. The smuggler for sure has to make it work, otherwise he won't get the money that's been deposited with the third party. Unscrupulous employers in countries such as ours take huge profit from this. They can employ people to do dirty work, pay them less than minimum wage, and give them social welfare too. And even you and I benefit. The reason your pizza last night cost 10 euros rather than 15 euros is because in the kitchen, someone was washing the dishes for less than minimum wage. We benefit too. Across the range, if you look at this as a business, everybody is incentivized to make it work. I think the third implication, and these are policy implications, we need to start thinking about how to disrupt the money flow if we want to stop migrant smuggling. Let's educate migrants and their families that this is not a gilt-edged investment. It's a risky investment that may not pay off. Let's try to undermine the trust system around which this escrow third-party process and system has developed. Let's try to tackle corruption, which means that people, both in origin countries and destination countries, are willing to take extra money in order to break the law. Let's focus on employers who are giving migrants jobs, exploiting them, and giving them the money to send back in the first place. So let's look at remittance flows to understand how remittances work and try to make sure they're directed towards constructive development orientation rather than to negative criminality. The bottom line is this, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can all agree that migrant smuggling is a modern-day scourge. It's clear to me that policy over the last 10 years has failed lamentably. And it seems to me what we need is a fresh, new approach to migrant smuggling. The bottom line is this. If you want to stop migrant smuggling, you need to reduce the bottom line. Thank you very much.